Tennis Channel is in wonderful hands, in large part thanks to my guest today. Bob Whyley, head of production at TC. He joins me on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and also a commentator with USTA. A chance to learn the story of Bob Whyley and how he thinks and what goes into his production and why he's been able to generate so much success at TC with a great team around him. Bob, thanks so much for coming on, man. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
So before we dive into everything you've done at TC, one of the things that I notice about you and the read I get on you is that you have a big heart. You're caring, you've got a lot of kindness, and you're compassionate. Where does that come from?
Well, I don't live my life like it's going to last forever. I know that my days are fleeting, and I know tomorrow is not guaranteed. And so, when you live your life knowing that it's not going to be forever, I think it gives you the proper perspective in how to treat other people.
You've used that mindset to build something from the start at TC. How have you grown while watching the network grow in the same time in Tennis Channel?
Well, when you step into the shoes of someone who has to launch a network, and when I left Fox Sports Net 20 years ago with a great man named Larry Myers, there's not really a rule book. You're starting something from nothing, or you're starting something from nothing, and there's something really exciting about having that blank slate and the freedom that I have had for the 20 years, that if it's something is not working out, it's okay. You can pivot and do something different. And I think that's given me the freedom to kind of grow and to learn, and to if I'm doing things wrong, or if I'm going down the wrong path, I can change, and it's not a big deal. So you give yourself a lot of grace, and therefore you give the people that you work with and the people that work for you a lot of grace as well. I mean, listen, the big thing that's different about tennis, and this, Brian, is we're on the air all the time.
Totally.
We're not doing a 90-minute college basketball game. We've had days where we've been on the air for 70 straight hours because tennis is popping off on three different continents. So you have to have the right mentality. You have to be able to treat people right, and just have patience, because the days are long, but we love what we do, don't we?
No doubt about it. Bob Whyley is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. So knowing there are those moments where, like you said, the continuous coverage is to 70 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours. How are you able to sort of keep tabs on everything and knowing that like you need to get to sleep or you need to get some sort of rest, but at the same time, understanding that you've got this and that things are under control?
Well, before you pressed record on this conversation, you had mentioned, and you're dead on. I have a wonderful team. There are a lot of people that are really passionate about the sport of tennis and that work at Tennis Channel. It's fantastic, and they're unicorns, because not only are they passionate about the sport, they're really good at what they do, and they take pride in what they do, and that doesn't come overnight. We've been around; it's overnight success in 20 years, and so the last 20 years, you kind of try to find the right people that fit, and we've had people that have been with us for many years, and we've had some all-stars, like Ross Schneiderman, I think, has been with us 11, 12 years, and he's our executive producer. Rob Flores, who oversees our remote and studio ops, has been with us for like under 2 years. So but they're both passionate about the sport. They both care. They're both good at what they do, and we've assembled a good team of folks that don't mind working the long hours and really want to tell the story of the sport. That's what we're all about: is the tennis the tennis story of record.
What are some of the proudest moments you have in covering major news breaking events in tennis, and the pride that you felt and have felt, Bob, in the way in which your team was able to attack that coverage?
Well, I would just say in the macro, and then I'll give you a one or two specific examples. In the macro, when we launched in 2003, in April of 2003, it was a Fed Cup from Lowell, Massachusetts, and the U.S. Fed Cup team, now the Billie Jean King Cup, were the Williams sisters, and they played both the singles matches and the doubles match, and that's how we started. And there was no Rafa, there was no Djokovic. A guy named Roger wouldn't win his first slam until June or July, excuse me, of that year at Wimbledon. And some of the old guard were retiring, or they were getting ready to retire. And like, how can you watch a tennis channel when you don't have McEnroe and Connors, and Sampras was just retiring, and Agassi would retire a couple of years later. And it's amazing to think back in 2003 when we launched, there was no Roger, Rafa, or Djokovic. And now you fast forward 20 years, and Roger's retiring or retired. Serena has evolved, and there are 63 Grand Slams between those three guys. To cover that, that's been amazing. And so then when somebody asks you, what are you going to do now that those three amazing and Serena are leaving the sport? It's okay. We've gone through this before. So I really look forward to Alcaraz and Iga and seeing what these young folks do. There are a lot of great young people. So from the macro, and we're, since we have, we are the rights holders to the ATP and WTA, we show every single match. That's exciting and that's fun. As far as, moments, I would imagine the first time we did Roland Garros, or the French Open, back in 2007, that was really exciting. The first time we did the US Open, I think in 2008, that was exciting. The first time going to Indian Wells or Miami or Cincinnati, those are great moments.
So many great moments, and more to continue. What I noticed, Bob, in hearing you talk right there, you love a good challenge. And it's sort of like a motivational tactic for you, because it forces you to get creative, to think in new ways, and then to perhaps implement some innovation into your broadcast, and to think about ways in which TC has been at the forefront of trying new things that other tennis or sports broadcasters or packagers are not doing. Where do you take pride in that, in trying new things, thinking outside the box, and being at the forefront of being a trendsetter?
That's a great question. A few things. We lost the WTA for, I think, 2 or 3 years to be in sports. And, we still had Tracy, and this was years ago, so maybe 6, 7 years ago. We still had Tracy and Lindsay and Martina and Chanda. And so, we just had them start calling men's matches. Martina had always called men's matches, but, to get Lindsay and Chanda and Tracy on board, they were just maybe a little hesitant at first, because that wasn't the thing that was done. And they really knew the ins and outs of the women's game and who was involved and who were the ancillary people involved. And so they had to get, calling tennis is calling tennis, but they just had to get some more knowledge about who does what in what on the men's side. But we didn't miss a beat. We didn't think twice of it. Having women call men's matches, 7, 8 years ago was not something that was done, and just didn't even think twice about it. And now I think you see a lot more of it in all sorts of different sports. But I think we were one of the first to take pride in that. And no, it doesn't matter. And I think Lindsay Davenport is one of the best analysts in the country. Doesn't matter what she's calling. Same thing with Chanda and the others. So that was one thing that we took a lot of pride in, that I thought that we were the first to do. And then just embracing new technology. When you're a niche sport like we are, you have to figure out how to make things work and not spend too much money, because we are who we are, and we have people who are passionate about the sport. But in order to show and do more, we have to be creative in how we lay things out, produce things, and embrace technology. How we get crews to work on the matches and then do TC Live, which is, like our sports center that we do daily of tennis. We've embraced remote productions where a control room can be anywhere. And we started off a few years ago with the desk and having Prakash and Danny Kleppinger all over the world. But, the control room and all the feeds came back to this building, and then we graduated that into tennis. So we're problem solvers at the end of the day.
Not to deviate from TC talk, but you come from a background in TV or music, if I'm not mistaken, and your dad being a recording engineer. What can you take from being around him that sort of gave you an idea, a premonition of what you wanted to do? But at the same time, what about what he did you want to go a different direction, and sort of that divergence that happened, even though he was in the business, but you wanted to take a different route?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, to be quite frank with you. And my father, who, he passed away 11 months ago, and he was obviously a great influence on my life.
Yeah.
He was more of a technician. He was more of an engineer by trade in the way he handled things. He mixed in the record business, and then in television with Jay Leno, The Tonight Show. And so that was a live to tape show, and being around that was exciting and fun and intense. And I never thought that I would find myself doing live sports production, but that's
Wow.
where I ended up. And I got into the business just over 25 years ago, and I haven't looked back. But of course, my father was an influence that way.
And always will be. Bob Whyley is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. So you mentioned this star-studded cast that you have, and the likes of Lindsay Davenport and Shauna Rubin, and the list goes on. How do you feel like they have taken TC to the next level, in the sense of you're trying them out in different ways as a broadcast, and you're being creative and implementing them? But when you see other sports not related to tennis sort of take what you guys are doing because of how you're using Lindsay and others, where do you find that coming in, where non-tennis broadcasts in commentary and productions have gleaned some inspiration from what you're doing?
Well, this is week 40 for us.
Yeah.
And literally, and that's how all of us look at this. I mean, so if you think, when Lindsay comes in here, she's working 6-hour days, for the first 5 days. She'll call both semis and a final. So, she's doing 40 hours of live television, in a week. Or Chanda or Martina, or, by the way, we've been the sports network of the injured. So we've had Jeannie Bouchard in here. Taylor Townsend's been in here. Cece Bellis, who just retired, has been in here. The future is bright. There are a lot of great young, tennis players. Taylor's still on the tour. She is amazing. The suit fits her. She is an amazing commentator. But we've all grown together. We do so many hours. It's so voluminous. There's so many stories to tell, that for any professional, the more that you do something, the better that you get. And so, Lindsay calls hundreds of hours of tennis a year. So does, Chanda, or Tracy or Martina, And so with all those reps, there's a comfortability that takes place, because you're honing your craft each time you're doing what you do. And it's great to be a part of their lives and their careers in broadcasting, because they're very talented.
How does your family support you, cheer you on, root you on in what you're doing work-wise? It was fun meeting your wife, and I can tell that, she's played a big role in your career, just from being there with you through this. How have they sort of supported you through this process that you've gone on, and everything you've done with TC?
Well, the love that you see through me, it goes to my family first. I love my wife. We've been married 29 years. I have two amazing kids. They both go to Baylor, a
Cool.
sophomore and a junior at Baylor. And on my gravestone, it's not going to be about my career. It's going to be about my family. So that's always going to be my compass. Uh, they've been very supportive, and because of the job that I've been blessed with, my wife was able to, and she's amazing. She was a top sales rep for pharmacy in Upjohn back in the day, but we both wanted to have a life where she could stay home and raise the kids, and she's been amazing. So the first handful of years that I was at Tennis Channel, I was gone for 4 or 5 months out of the year, because not only were we doing the 3 weeks of the slams because of the prep that's involved when you're there, we did a lot of remotes. I mean, back in the day, Tennis Channel produced all of the US events, and not just for Tennis Channel, but for ESPN and the world feeds. And we did that for 7 or 8 years. And so we would, Los Angeles was easy, La Costa was easy, but, you go out to Washington, D.C., and we go to Canada, and there's Cincinnati. And then we did both cups with Davis and Fed, now BJK Cup, and we were responsible for anything that was produced in this country. And so I was traveling a lot, making sure that we were doing what it needed to do to have a solid telecast, not just for us, but for other networks. And so that just took a lot of my time. We don't do that as much anymore. I don't travel nearly as much anymore, which is great. So spending a lot of quality time with my wife as an empty nester down in Dana Point.
But in Dana Point, from listening to you talk at that latest SVG event, it sounds like you've got quite a setup as far as if you want to call it a control room, or where you're able to basically keep tabs on everything that's going on remotely. What does your setup look like, and the ways in which you're able to keep pace with what's happening up in Santa Monica?
Well, I'm in Santa Monica today. This is our expo facility, and because we're on exposition. It's a 2110 facility, and that just simply means it's a new way of delivery and receiving signals in and out of the building and throughout the different control rooms. But Sinclair has really taken care of Tennis Channel from a production and operations and facility standpoint. We have multiple control rooms, multiple studios, and everything talks to each other. So we're able to do a lot of great product out of here. And I know you'll talk about our studio. It's fantastic. But what I have down in Dana Point, COVID was a curse, but there were also some blessings that came out of it. And technology that was probably a couple years behind was kind of fast forwarded. So now through dirty internet, just as long as I have enough data, we have an operations genius here named Bruno Brunel, and let me take a detour real quick.
Yeah.
Bruno was our first engineer in charge when I took over for all the slams, and so he designed our remote facilities in Paris and at Wimbledon. And I always thought to myself, if we ever have an opportunity to snag him, we need to snag this guy. The guy's mind is amazing. He is the smartest TV guy I've ever worked with. And so he's always tinkering, he's always designing, and he makes us better. And so Bruno, used the technology that's now available because everybody was so locked in for a while. So through internet, I can have a snapshot of everything that's going on. I can see all the different channels of transmission that are coming in the building through this system that he made for me at home. I can see a snapshot of what our main production control room looks like, as well as our control room B and C look like. So I can always see what the producers are doing. I have comms with them. I can talk to the talent on the booth or the talent in the stage, or I can talk to a producer or anybody. And it's not, I'm not there micromanaging, telling them how to be better. That's not my job. Ross does that, but I'm there to just encourage them, to thank them, because a lot of tennis takes place in Europe. So we're starting here at 3 or 4 in the morning. If there's anything of note that I need to talk to them about, or I have the ability to do that, and always have my finger on the pulse of what's going on in our air, which is important.
So how hard is it to then give yourself a moment to, because it's such a 24/7 news cycle, to give yourself a moment to relax for a moment, given that it's nonstop and there's always tennis happening? So that moment to escape for just a second, to maybe have dinner with your family. I would think, knowing everything that you're doing, it might feel like you might miss something and you just want to make sure you're always on it. And obviously you are, but that idea of having to always be there and fully engaged at 24/7 time, how do you deal with that aspect of the business as well?
Well, I'm always on, and I'm always available, and it's always in my mind. Even when I'm on vacation, I always have to check in. There are things that I have to
Yeah.
do, and that's okay. But on the other side of the coin, I have a lot of trust. I have a lot of trust in the leadership in this department. I have a lot of trust in the people in the control room that know what they're doing and can do it better than I can. So my style is never to put my thumb on people, to micromanage people. It's incumbent upon me to empower people, to make them feel ownership in what they're doing. And as I told you earlier, they're all passionate about tennis. And when you're passionate about tennis, but you're also really good as a production person, it's a winning combo. So I'm not stressed out. I'm not wound tight, making sure they do things the way I think they should be doing things, or that they're missing something, because they don't. They're professional.
Passion and, I think, compassion as well. And I think there's a beautiful marriage between those two with you and your team. My last question for you, and Bob Whyley, head of production, Tennis Channel. I'm Bryan Fenley with USTA. The construction of your new set and the glamour and the thought process that went into that at TC to really show off your talent and make a name for yourself. What went into that?
Well, I know where we came from. I mean, when we launched in 2003, and I was reminiscing about the Williams sisters in April, and Djokovic really wasn't on the map until July. There were a lot of years where we were just in a VO booth calling matches, and
Wow.
sometimes just passing through world feeds. And so we never really had an opportunity to message and talk to our viewer. And anybody can pass through a world feed and call themselves whatever they want. But when you're a 48 a week professional sports network with live tennis 48 weeks out of the year, and you have the men's tour and the women's tour and the cups and the slams, we feel like we always have to be making sense of a very voluminous world. And that's why I told you this is week 40. So knowing where we came from, and knowing what we didn't have, we knew where we wanted to go and what we needed. And so, there were chapters in Tennis Channel, from pass throughs to VO booths only, to insert stages, to a B- stage. And so when Sinclair built this facility for us, as well as the RSNs, we knew exactly what we wanted, and we wanted a studio that fit the grandeur of what tennis was. And so if you watch Tennis Channel at all, you'll see it. We have 3 or 4 different looks from this studio. It's a beautiful set. And, whether we're standing up or sitting down or at a desk or doing instructional, this studio is one-stop shop for us. And it's definitely another actor or player in this thing that we call tennis. So we're
You,
very proud of it.
as you should be, and you've been a big player in seeing its growth from trying to figure out what you wanted to be and wanted to do from college to see where you've become. And at the heart of you, the core of you, is what I go back to at the beginning of this conversation. It's the kindness, it's you being one to empower others, the passion. And then that just reverberates across your team. And I think that even the listener, the viewer, can see that. And then clearly that is definitely in the inner workings and can readily notice that. Bob Whyley, head of production at Tennis Channel. I'm Bryan Fenley with USTA. Bob, this was so fun, man. Thanks so much for the introspection and the look into your life and the formation of TC and how you've watched it grow with prideful joy ever since you got there in 2003.
Well, I appreciate the time, Brian. Thank you very much. And thank you to the team. We have an amazing team. If I can get one message across, how grateful I am for the people that we have that do the voodoo that we do. So thank you, Brian.